Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I tried to figure out the secret sauce to living an extraordinary life, trying to figure out the components of freedom. And once I figured out the secret sauce of time, financial, location, health, and mental freedom, I thought about looking for people embodying that. So today, I'm happy to introduce Bridgit, and she's a client success manager, and she's the creator of the Revolt leadership coach and strategist for conscious disruptors. So a lot to unpack there, and she's on a mission to help 10,000 women do business on their own terms. And it's going to be a fascinating conversation, and I'll introduce Bridgit. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great conversation. I enjoyed having this with as many people as possible, so I'm excited.
Yeah, a lot of the audience are professional, women. They're executives, physicians, entrepreneurs. So tell us more about your story, how you got started, and we'll get into the conversation.
Oh boy, I think probably my story, like everyone's, is a very long up and down journey. But I have been I've been in corporate for at least 20 years, but I started out in a male-dominated industry. I started out in construction and decided this is kind of where I wanted to plant, my flag. There wasn't a lot of women out in the field. They weren't on job sites. It wasn't a thing. And I started to realize that's kind of an issue as far as where that stood. And I kind of grew through that and kind of grew up into, corporate as far as running an office and running a construction office and dealing with that and kind of continuously pushing against the norms as it related to what we were supposed to be doing in construction. And that kind of led me into coaching. And I've coached on so many different levels until I figured out exactly what it was that was right for me. I mean, I can tell you I've done everything: fitness and health coaching, nutrition coaching, mindset, life. I mean, just every single thing. And what I kind of realized at the end of the day is we're all continuously evolving and trying to find ourselves. But there's that one thing that always stuck for me, which was I've always been that person that wants to push against what society says we're supposed to be doing. So that's kind of where I fell right back into. It's kind of amazing how the cycle goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most people on this podcast, they're entrepreneurs, so they know what the roller coaster ride, and for whatever reason, they're here. And so underlying your backstory is talking about breaking the mode, being a conscious rebel, being a maverick. So one thing is you talk about is especially marginalized people learning to embrace your inner maverick, and that's the secret to a successful non-traditional business. Expand upon that.
What's funny is the working with women, it's amazing to find out, like, when you actually dig deep, there's a little bit of rebellion in every single person that's especially women. It's just that I think that we're a little bit less at ease in showing it. So for me, it's pulling that part out, like what part of you, and it's amazing to watch the difference in what that rebellion looks like for everyone. But that's like been the most exciting part. Like, I love using word maverick and revolt, and I like using those strong words, and it usually scares people. Like, I don't want to revolt. I don't want to be a disruptor. I just want to be me. But when we start to pull that out, they realize that, like, that's kind of like the secret little piece that's inside them that is their secret sauce. And it is for entrepreneurs, it's definitely the key.
And it's all talking about like conscious disruption. And being how do you kind of have to juggle this, because if you go out on your own, you're an entrepreneur, you have to really make it on your own, your success is all you. But then if you do, like, if you're within an organization and you kind of have to like play by the rules, a little bit. So talk about the power of letting go, how to stop living by society's rules and start living for yourself.
That is so true, because right now, besides the Revolt working with just entrepreneurs, I actually work with lawyers who run firms who feel like they've got to have this very stringent, strict rules. And I'm like, I remind you, this is your firm. You get to decide what the rules are. You get to decide how you play by those rules. If you want rule, I mean, I think we just forget that we get to make these decisions for ourselves, and like the structure, you get to decide what that is. You make the rules. I've never, let's just make this with except the legal, not getting yourself in trouble rules. But beyond that, I've never subscribed to rules that somebody else has created. Even when I was a kid, from the time I was very little, rules were not like, I decide what my rules are. And so now as grown adults, I'm like, you really do get to decide what your rules are. And it's amazing to see how many people are like, this is a whole new idea. You get to dictate what your business looks like. You get to dictate what, even if you're working in corporate, they have structure. You get to show up and decide, listen, that maybe I have a better way, and it might be going against your rules and your structure. But if you strongly feel like it's a better way, then stand up, speak up. Like, let's show people that sometimes, their rules aren't the exact thing that's working. So I think it works in both. Entrepreneurship, definitely showing up just exactly the way you want to show up. And it doesn't really matter what the rules are, because amazingly enough, people go into entrepreneurship thinking this is going to be a space for me to be who I am. And what actually happened is more restrictive, more following the leader, more rules. And that's not why everybody's starting. So it's definitely a conversation that needs action beyond just talking.
Yeah. It's interesting because if you look after COVID, there's this whole segment that's just kind of looking to exit the system. They don't want to spend 50 years and play politics and all of this, and just kind of create what you described as create your own rules, live by your own values, not have to answer to a boss and all of this. So what is your advice for, especially for the women audience out there, breaking the mold, and especially with this sea of conformity, and especially there's this social pressure to, be and act in a certain way. And if you go out of that, you're labeled and all of that. What is your advice?
The biggest advice that I would have is you're showing up to be an entrepreneur because you want to have the space to do that. The moment that you decide that you are going to fall in line with what someone else is doing, even though we know in our body, you can feel when something goes against what it is that is right for you, and yet we're still doing it. It happened to me. I came into the online space, as a coach and, ready to go. I was doing it my way and fell into the trap of, okay, I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to follow what this person says. And well, this person's making a gazillion dollars, so we have to do what they say. And it is a rabbit hole that is very easy to go down. And once you go down it, you actually, in my case, I completely lost who I was. I didn't know what type of business I could even do anymore. It became emotional stress than it was the excitement of actually showing up and serving and helping people. So don't allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole, because it can take you into places that you do not want to go.
Yeah, I love that. That's so, especially listening to your gut and intuition, and like your body knows, what is it, and especially creating boundaries. Talk about, boundaries for entrepreneurs, not, staying in your lane. Social media is kind of, pummeling us with, this picture perfect. Tell us more about boundaries and how you establish boundaries.
For me, I kind of chuckle at the boundaries, in quotations, that I see a lot of people talking about. And it's we're using that term so lax now, as far as how I want to make it so that I am, I work 4 hours and I want you to pay me a ton of money, and I don't want to talk to you. I don't really want to help you. I don't subscribe to that. I'm a big person of service, and I believe that's the sole purpose of this. We all have a business and we have dollars to make, and that happens. So the boundaries I set up for myself are different than what most business owners set up. I just make sure that I understand that when I start to consume, which we all do, and find myself consuming to the point where my mind is shifting and I know that it's not right, that's a boundary that I have to stop. I will immediately unsubscribe, unfollow. If there's something that's starting to push me into that trajectory, I'll immediately unfollow and even if you snooze, I tell my clients, even if you are following someone that you feel like is someone you'd like to mimic or to follow down their path, and they're starting to have a negative feeling around that, snooze them. You have to start. If you're not willing to just let them go, put them on snooze, because this is the thing that's creating the stress and the inner turmoil. And I think that's a huge boundary that we forget. We're on this social media platform with all these people, but we forget that we're in control of it. You can snooze them. You can unfollow them. You get to decide.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because there's so much, spam email. There's people, want to hop on a call. Let's hop on a call, and these like
coffee chats. That's the new one. Let's get on a coffee chat. And you're like, oh, this could be fun. Yeah, we don't, most people we don't go to coffee shops anymore to have coffee chats. And then you get on them and it's like a complete, not what you expected.
Yeah, there's no agenda. It's like, let's hop into this meeting. Let's have a meeting, appear busy, and it's yeah. So very interesting conversation. And you talk about, there's this idea of this midlife crisis. It's not really a crisis anymore. And then now there's these quarter life turns. Tell us this magic of midlife, how to redefine success and live your best life in your 40s and beyond.
I think that it's funny because I originally did start when this was happening to me. I did say, oh my God, it's the midlife crisis. It's that thing. But what I really realized is that it's not really a crisis. It's quite literally me actually getting to the point in life where I'm figuring out what it is that I truly want, how I truly want to live, how I want to have what success actually looks like for me, because it looks totally different than it did in my 20s. How I want to show up, how I want to serve, the things that affect me and the things that don't. So it's actually like the journey of finding yourself sort of like all culmination in one thing. And so I think the energy of that feels like a crisis initially when we're going through it. But it's actually the best thing that actually can happen to you if you just let it happen the way it's supposed to. We're kind of forceful. We want things to happen right now, and we want to know what everything means right now, because that's just, human nature and how we are. And we want to be certain of what we're doing. But if you can just let go and allow yourself to go through the process in whatever time it's going to take, and not have to know the answer in every turn you're supposed to take, it's actually a pretty amazing journey.
Yeah. It's really, I love that. And again, we're pummeled by mainstream media. We have to be a billionaire in our teens, and, what are we going to do with the rest of our lives once we do that? And, it's really interesting, this idea where, your 40s and your 50s and your 60s are where you flourish, and your 20s and 30s are where you're learning everything, getting experience. Really interesting conversation. So, and I know you do coaching, and who's your target audience, and how do you help people as a coach in this industry?
It's funny, as I used to say, and I don't subscribe to, this is another thing I rebel against. The statement, the niches are in the riches are in the niches, whatever that statement is. I love really I'm a very type A action oriented person. So if I started out with I want to serve women, and then it turned into, I'm having a really good time serving like corporate, and now it's lawyers. And I enjoy any type of person that really is just type A and wants to get to work and realizes that we're all still growing, we're all still learning, we're all still evolving. And I think that it's a process that I don't think I ever want to be out of. So when somebody says, we've gotten to the stage where we're supposed to learn in our 20s and now we're doing here, I'm finding that I'm evolving more in my 40s than I ever did in my 20s. Like the desire for knowledge, desire to do more, to be more. It's less about having more, I think, in this stage of life than it is about being and doing more, I think. So I just love that aspect of it. And I'm realizing I used to, and the funny aspect of it, and I think a lot of women coaches do this, like we just generally want to work with women because that's what feels comfortable. But since working with male lawyers, I realize how amazing it is to actually work with men. It's so different and it's so much fun. So that's kind of an expansion for me in this stage, which has been actually pretty fun.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I find, in, 20s, 30s were kind of tumultuous and you're learning, going through, and then 40s is like you're even busier than your 30s and doing more. And you realize how precious time is, and it's not all about like this like net worth, and it's more just every second is precious. So how do people contact you, follow you, reach out to you on social media, and work with you?
Oh, that's super easy. I keep it super simple, both on Instagram and Facebook. It's just Bridgit Norris, just BRI Norris. You can find me both there. I'm not as active on Instagram. My son likes to tell me it's because I'm old, because old people don't use Instagram. But I do, I do visit both. But yeah, I'm on both platforms. So you can just find me there, shoot me a message, and we can chat. I promise I won't invite you to a coffee chat for just to look busy.
And what a great way to end it. So for all the listeners out there, let's thank Bridgit for coming onto the show, giving out interesting ideas, new concepts, points of action. Be sure to follow her on her social media. All these resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.